we've got two clips today. We'll both talk about both of them. You both talk about both of them. Here's the first one.
Tory Natalie Elphicke crossing the floor to Labour wasn't just highly unexpected.
Come in. You're very welcome.
But looks somewhat awkward too.
Just sit down. Really good day.
That's been a great day.
Really fantastic just to see you cross over.
I'm so pleased.
And everything you've done on housing, etc. is so important to us. That track record.
I'm really excited.
Delivery is your thing, isn't it?
It is.
So it's really, really good. I think she speaks for very many Tory voters in saying that the Tory party has changed. It's left the centre ground. But equally, the Labour Party has changed, and we are very clearly the party of the national interest.
If the Tories have left the centre ground, though, it's a place that Natalie Elphicke never actually spent much time in, her critics said today.
She talks about the Tories being taken away from the centre ground. Well, Natalie's worked over the last 5 years to take us away from that centre ground.
2 years ago, her preferred choice for Tory leader was Liz Truss. And on immigration, Ms Elphicke previously tweeted, Labour back fewer and weaker border controls. And then they are not serious about stopping small boats. And then just last year, she wrote this piece for the Daily Express entitled, Don't trust Labour on immigration. They really want open borders.
Right, so who wants to start? John, what would you like to say in a couple of minutes about Natalie Elphicke? Would Labour take anyone from the Tories, anyone at all?
Oh, if they'll take anything. I'm only glad that Fred and Rose West are dead, else they'd probably accept them on the grounds they liked having kids in garden. And, you know, this is so wooden, you'd have to cut down an entire forest to build a replica of it. You know, this man, he never win an Oscar, not even for impersonating a Labour leader. And he talks about, you know, the centre ground party of national interest. Well, I don't know what national interest is. I ain't got the same interests as Richard Branson and billionaires and the exploitative employers, you know, and it just goes from bad to worse. Later in that clip, there's Anna C. Dodds, who has just about as much charisma as Starmer, and just welcoming in this, you know, there's obvious comparisons with Diane Abbott and Corbyn and that, but for me, the quote of it that sums it up is Penny Mordaunt saying she's too left-wing for Starmer's Labour Party, and that's probably true. And final message, if you're still in this shit show, then there's something wrong with you. You know, if you'd rather be in a party that welcomes people like this, but not socialists, then you're part of the problem.
Right. Jackie, what would you like to say about that?
I mean, Annalise Dodd, I thought she looked like a hostage, actually. I thought she looked like, if you saw her earliest sort of interviews, she looked like somebody who'd been really told that that's what she had to say, and she had that kind of terror on her face, and nobody was going to interview her too harshly. But I mean, when you get people like Rosie Duffield being shocked, which is what the story was this morning, because more and more is coming out of the nastiness behind this Elphicke woman, then you know you're in trouble. And they're right. But they're right. This does reflect today's Labour Party. And it has changed. It no longer is a broad church, if it ever was, some of you might say, but it's certainly no longer that. It goes from the centre to the extreme right, because anybody who's lived around that area, which I've done, and campaigned around that area, will know the reputation of the Elphickes and their closeness to real fascist policies. So you can be in Labour, it's not a problem, just be the centre and the far right. And that's what we're getting at. This is today's Labour Party. And I thought that iconography with her in the blue suit and the British Airways sort of neckerchief with the flag in the back, I thought that was brilliant. That is today's Labour Party. That's what you're voting for. And I'm saying that very pointedly to a number of people that I know. Whatever they're saying, are going to be voting Labour.
Right. Yeah. And And thank you both for that. I mean, the next one has a kind of similar cringe. We'll go through this one. This is David Lamy's visit to the US. You're going to love this.
I'm perhaps unusual for a British politician in that I've been to America more times than I've been to France. I've lived in the United States. I've studied in America. I've got family all across this great continent. And I'm an Atlanticist who believes fundamentally in the bond between our two countries. And I'm a man made of the Atlantic. And I share something deep with millions of Americans, because if I have the privilege to be the next Foreign Secretary, I will be the first to be able to trace his lineage back through the Atlantic slave trade. This is my 7th time in Washington since becoming Shadow Foreign Secretary, where I'm meeting senior White House officials and meeting friends in Congress on both sides of the aisle. I'm here because I believe in our alliance, but also because in recent years, the Conservatives have damaged Congress's trust in the UK by generating senseless rows over Northern Ireland and undermining our relationship. I passionately believe Britain can do better in Washington, that we can make the case better for security, climate and trade. These are dangerous times. There is war in Europe. There is war in the Middle East. On every continent, we're facing a climate emergency and a great power competition. This is why our alliance with Washington is critical. Cooperation isn't a luxury, it's a necessity.
Jackie, what would you like to say about this? Because I found that quite alarming.
Well, I'm going to say certain things because I think this was an advert that was particularly about Uncle Lamy, which is what I call him. Uncle Lamy being a black person doing this job, because there were certain coded words in there which was speaking specifically to the black community. Now, he said he was an Atlanticist, and he also said he was a product of the Atlantic, and he pointed to his heritage in terms of, well, he didn't say it, but enslaved people, because you're not supposed to say that bit. And what that means is he's saying that just like me and many and all Black Caribbean people, we're actually a product of the Atlantic slave trade. So he's trying to double down on a number of black people, basically calling him an Uncle Tom, which is, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that he is, of course, but there's many who would actually say he is. And how dare he? Because first of all, you have the Annalisa Hodge as a hostage, and now you have Uncle Lamy as the chief of prostitutes, because that's what these people are. They will prostitute themselves for any avenue of power. Just recall what Uncle Lamy was actually saying but 2 years ago about Corbyn, and I guarantee you, if there was another change, he would want to change again, because Uncle Lamy is one of those who actually has his sights set on being the first black Labour leader, and he is licking whatever arse he needs to lick in order to get there.
Very vivid description there, Jackie. John, what's your, how would you follow that?
Well, first of all, can I ask anybody not to call David Lammy a fat bastard in the comments? Being fat is nothing to do with him being a bastard. And, you know, contrast these, whatever they are, films with the stuff that Ken Loach used to do when he was doing stuff for Corbyn and that. And it's worse than cringeworthy. It's like a bad travel advert, and all it needed were Frank Sinatra singing "Come Fly with Me" as the voiceover. And here you've got this cretin walking slowly through streets of Washington, talking about his heritage, and he believes in this alliance, and you know, working together, and it's important for the world. We're not in alliance with US state. We're a poodle of them. You know, when they rang Johnson up and said, go and scup at peace deal in Ukraine, you know, he jumped to their tune. So what annoys me more than anything is this bastard's bragging about he's been to it more than France. I can't get a visa to visit the US because of my strike convictions. So that's made me hate him even more if that were possible. And again, Jesus Christ, you know, it could be an advert for Boeing, whose planes are dropping out the sky at the same rate that Labour's credibility is dropping out the sky. So, like I say before, if you're going to support this lot, then you're part of the problem.